morning, or whenever you're watching this. It's always morning when I'm recording. To Intro A and P, I am here with you guys today just to do our very last little bit of the review for your notes. So after these few slides I'm going to go over, your entire study guide should be all filled out except for the crossword puzzle, which it's not a homework assignment to complete, but it's always helpful to do because you might see some of those definitions on your test. So we've already filled these notes out. This was on the very front page, but the flow chart we're going to fill out goes along with this. So I just thought about showing you the picture to help jog your memory, is that our hormones are either one of two things. They're either steroid or amino acid based. And so the steroid ones, which are a little bit more rare, they can go directly into the cell and activate genes this way. Whereas the amino acid based ones, this hormone can only attach to the outside extracellular receptor. But then there's a whole chain of reactions that occurs in here. So this would be page 7 of your packet. Just another way to write this information down rather than on a picture, but a flow chart. So we have our chemistry of hormones. Either the hormones are amino acid based, and that just means that they are parts of proteins basically. So these are all different kind of words we use for things that make up amino acids, protein, peptides, or amines. That's not very important that you know that for the test. And then the other type are steroid based hormones. There's another one you don't need to know for this test. It's called prostaglandins, but we won't go over that. And then the way that those hormones act on cells is these two little bottom things in blue. So either they can directly activate genes inside the nucleus, and that's what steroids do. They go intracellular, all the way into the cell, or they are a secondary messenger system, and that's the amino acid based hormones. They go on the outside of the cell and cause a chain reaction to occur. So they activate enzymes based on basically kind of knocking on the door of the cell. They don't go in, but they send a signal to the inside that way. All right. Then the next chart that's on page 7 we'll go over, but it's talking about the different ways that we release hormones. So again, we've already taken notes on. It's on the first page. But remember, we talked about hormonal stimulus, which is hormones telling other glands to release their hormones. We have humoral stimulus, which is where something in the bloodstream causes a reaction to occur. And then the neural stimulus, which is like a zap coming from the spinal cord directly to a gland to release its hormones. Probably the more rare one, but is still important. So, all right, this is again just a flow chart describing what's in that picture. So, as we just said, there's hormonal stimulus. It is our most common one. So, here's an example of something we've talked about in this chapter. Your anterior pituitary, your master gland, has lots of tropic hormones, right? It stimulates lots of other glands. So, your anterior pituitary will release the hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. And as the name suggests, the thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid. And then the thyroid will release its hormones, T3 and T4, to have their effect on metabolism of the body. So this is what we call hormonal stimulus, where one hormone stimulating another hormone to be released. Tropic hormones is what we call that. Then humoral stimulus. That word humors means liquid, so blood. So whatever's going on in my bloodstream is going to affect that gland. So our example for this one is, let's say there's a decrease in calcium in my bloodstream. That direct decrease in the blood is what's going to stimulate my parathyroid gland to release its hormone, parathyroid hormone, and then it will increase calcium. It'll have an effect on my osteoclast to start breaking down bone to put calcium in my blood. So that's humoral because the blood is the stimulus. Then we have neural, which is a little bit more rare, but this is where an electrical impulse is what sends the signal itself. So let's say there's a scary situation, I'm stressed, like, crossing the street and barely get hit by, like, missed by a car, right? I'm going to feel this rush of adrenaline. And really what adrenaline is epinephrine. So that stress is going to directly zap my adrenal glands to release its hormone. This is good because it's faster, especially in a stressful situation when you have to react really quickly. This is why this one's a neural stimulus. It's more rare. Usually hormones stimulate other hormones, or your blood does, but this one does work a little bit more quickly. All right, all that's left is the concept map. Sometimes I save this and do it the day of the test, but since our notes are so short, I thought I'd go over it today too. So you could just rock and roll on your test tomorrow, which will be emailed to you in your school email. And it'll be timed much like our last test was. All right, so here we are, Unit 9, Endocrine System. So as we just went over, we have two categories of hormones. Those that bind to the membrane on the outside are amino acid-based hormones, or those that can cross the cell membranes, the steroids. And then the rest of this unit was just about the glands and what they secrete and what they do. So let's start with our master gland over here, the pituitary gland. Jumping up here, there's two halves to it. You have the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. It's called the neurohypophysis. That's not important for the test. But the reason it gets that name is because that hypo is because the hypothalamus is actually what kind of controls your posterior pituitary. So posterior is different than the anterior because the posterior, these two hormones aren't actually made by the posterior. The hypothalamus makes these two. And then the posterior is what stores them and releases them when it's signaled to do so. So those two hormones that the posterior has is oxytocin, OT, and an antidiuretic hormone, ADH. Oxytocin is what stimulates the contractions of the uterus during childbirth, as well as ejection of milk from the mammary glands. And then ADH, antidiuretic hormone, is what helps you conserve water. So when somebody is consuming alcohol, it inhibits ADH from working. And so this is why people who have been drinking quite a bit have to urinate quite a bit, is because the hormone that regulates to conserve water isn't there. And so this is what leads to hangovers, is you're basically super duper dehydrated the next morning. All right. Now, on the pituitary gland here, we have what controls the pituitary, just like up here is the hypothalamus. It's considered a neurosecretory cell. So in the case of the anterior pituitary, the hypothalamus sends out releasing hormones to stimulate the anterior pituitary, and then it releases its hormones. So it's more of a tropic hormonal release. So there's lots of hormones listed here. I only have two that we can see, at least on this page. We'll see the rest on the next. But GH, growth hormone, tells your muscles and bones to grow, super active during childhood as you're growing and developing. PRL is prolactin, as in lactate. It is what is going to stimulate the breast to make milk after childbirth. Oxytocin releases the milk. Prolactin makes the milk. They're both involved, just a little bit different role. Okay, more on the pituitary as we move down the next page. But then we have our thymus. Your thymus sits in your neck right here. It's really active in young people because it is making these cells of your immunity. So the hormone it has is thymosin. So thymosin, that's easy to remember. And it's responsible for T cell maturation, meaning maturing of your T cells. These are the ones that are involved in your immunity, so you can have immune response. When you're a kid and coming in contact with tons of stuff, your thymus is super active, remembering all of these diseases that you've come in contact for or gotten your vaccines for. All right, and then our hormone that produces T3 and T4, that is the very, very important thyroid, also located in your neck. It those two hormones, okay, T3 and T4, are very important because they are responsible for metabolism. If somebody has an issue with their metabolism, your doctor might check your thyroid levels. The other thing that's important to know is that you have to have iodine in your diet in order to make these hormones. Somebody lacking iodine in their diet, usually from a lack of salt, might form a goiter, which is that large swelling of the neck right here. The other hormone the thyroid produces is calcitonin, whereas parathyroid hormone increases calcium in the bloodstream. Calcitonin is going to decrease it. So those two are considered antagonistic to each other, as in they work opposite. All right, we're going to jump back down, talking about the rest of these anterior pituitary hormones over here. So notice every single one of these has an arrow pointing to this, tropic hormones, meaning that they are going to stimulate something else. So LH, luteinizing hormone. What it luteinizes is your egg and sperm to produce their gametes. So it is actually what, during ovulation, what is going to signal to the eggs to release the egg when it is time to ovulate. So luteinizing hormone is important for that. We also have FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, which also stimulates the gonads. We have ACTH, adrenal corticotropic hormone. AC, adrenal cortex. It stimulates the adrenal cortex to release its hormones. And then lastly, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, that stimulates your thyroid, as the name suggests. Okay. All of these four are considered tropic hormones because they stimulate other things. All right, what produces PTH? Well, that's parathyroid hormone. So of course, it's the parathyroid. And as I just mentioned, it's going to increase calcium in your bloodstream. The adrenal glands are broken up into two sections. You have the adrenal medulla, which is the inside, the inner portion. This is the one that has the epinephrine and norepinephrine, called catecholamines, excuse me. And then you have your adrenal cortex, which is the outer portion. The hormones it produces are aldosterone, cortisol, and testosterone. Okay. These are all steroids. Sorry. All right. And then following our arrow down here, we have our pineal gland. The pineal gland is in your brain, and it's what's responsible for making melatonin, your biological rhythms. So being able to, your sleepfulness, your wakefulness, and all that good stuff. And then your gonads release their own set of hormones, androgens, the testosterones, and estrogens for females. I just have estrogens written down here, but depending if you're male or female, right? But what is important to know, since testosterone's here and estrogen is here, what I do want you to remember is that both of those hormones are responsible for your secondary sex characteristics. So it's kind of what gives you your male or female attributes. So females have usually a lack of facial hair, breast development, kind of more like body shape that's like this, narrow shoulders, wider hips. Males have usually narrow hips, wider shoulders. Males have heavier and denser bones, more muscular development, lowering of their voices. All of those secondary sex characteristics, not egg or sperm production, but the things that give you your femininity or your masculinity are due to your estrogen and or testosterone. All right, and then moving on along here, the gland that produces insulin and glucagon is the pancreas. And your pancreas is part of the digestive system as well, but it produces hormones, and so it's included in this unit. I do believe that's it. Your test is tomorrow, so I will be emailing you a link to your test so you can access that. And then we're going to be working towards reviewing and practicing for your final after that. You'll probably see me posting stuff for that today, just so the seniors can get their head start on all that good stuff. So anyways, endocrine test tomorrow, and I hope you have an awesome day. Bye.